Hello and welcome to the 7 Keys to a Great Relationship. My name is Jessica and I'm really happy to have you with me this evening. And I really look forward to a really great look at our relationships and what we can do. And I love talking about relationships, mainly because I love mine. But it's been hard work and I've learned lots of things along the way. And that's what I want to share with you today. Some of the keys to these relationships and see if they can help you polish yours and make it even better. Just briefly, in case you don't know me or this is the first time you've actually come to one of my webinars or had a look at anything that I do, I just want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Jessica McGregor Johnson, you know that bit, and I've been doing life guidance and coaching for the last 18 years. I live in southern Spain. I came here on holiday about 15 years ago for 2 weeks, really liked it and decided to completely change my life and come and live here. And as challenging it was in the beginning, because when you make that kind of huge life change, it really has been the best thing I've ever done. And I absolutely love it. I love living in Spain. I love the work that I do, which I started to do 2 years after I got here. And I haven't looked back since, really. Now, relationships is what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at some different things around relationships. I coach many people on relationships as part of what I do with my work when they're going through big life change. And often when you do look at your life and you look at changing your life, you start to look at every different aspect of your life. And relationships are a really key aspect of life. And there are a few common themes that seem to come up. And I thought, as it was Valentine's Day coming up in a kind of a month's time, just under a month's time, we do a bit of pre-work and get our relationships in an even better place for that traditional celebration. Or if you're single and you'd like to be in a relationship, then this can help you prepare for that and be kind of ready for the next amazing adventure. Now, I just want to say that the things we're talking about in romance, I love Valentine's Day. I think it's a lovely romantic day, but this isn't just for that. I think these things are the efforts that we can make throughout the year in our relationships. And that's a key thing. We often let the romance fade. We often let our effort fade. And we forget that relationships actually take work. And they really need to be a focus for us. Now, it doesn't have to be hard work, but it just like a little bit of effort goes a heck of a long way in a relationship. And so there are a few things that once you are aware of them, they can help. And so that's what we're going to cover today. 7 things that I think are key things that can help you in your relationship. So we're going to look at those. Now, and I've just kind of pressed a button for a slide and I'm on the wrong picture, so let me just go here a second. Where is my mouse? There we go. So the first thing is that we all, gone one too far now. We all have a love strategy. Now, that might sound a bit clinical, but a strategy is just a certain way we do things. It's a certain way we do something to have a certain outcome. We all have strategies at work and things like that, and we have love strategies too. And what these are, it's how we know we're loved. And there are 3 main types of love strategy, and you might recognize yourself in them or you might recognize your partner in them. But once we work out what they are, it can be really useful. So the first one is by you know you're loved by being bought or given something or being shown in some way by an action, having something done for you. I had a relationship many years ago where my partner would always do all these different things for me. Bring me a gin and tonic in the bath, or come home and you'd be cooking dinner or something like that. And everybody thought, isn't he wonderful? And it used to drive me up the wall because it actually isn't my love strategy, but it was his. And this is the mistake that people often make when they're using strategies, is that they don't understand what their partner's love strategy is, and you really do need to understand this. So that's the first one, being bought or given something or being shown in a particular way. And if that's you, if your partner does that for you, you absolutely know it. Now we'll talk about how these trip us up once we've looked at all 3 of them. And the next one The next strategy that we have is being told in a specific way, in a special voice. So for most people, that means those lovely 3 words, I love you. Now, that's my love strategy. I need to hear those words. Not my current partner's love strategy. She had to learn those words because it didn't mean anything to her. But, you can do things for each other. Cows come home, but if you don't tell me you love me, I don't know. It doesn't land. So that's the second way. So maybe you're a person who likes to hear the words, and not necessarily the words I love you, it could be something else, but it's a way that tells you that your partner cares, and that's a real key thing. And there's a third way that you know that you're being loved, and that way is by being touched in a special way or in a special place. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean being touched in a sexual way. It could be, if that's your thing. But it could also just be that you love to have a hand in the small of your back, or you love somebody to caress your cheek or to ruffle your hair. Everybody's strategy is slightly different. But when you understand that there are 3 strategies, main strategies, there's variations on a theme, of course. But when you understand that we actually do have these 3 strategies by being bought or given something, or being shown in a particular way with an action, by being told in a specific way, in a special voice, or by being touched in a special way, in a special place. When we understand that these are how we communicate love within relationships, it's a really useful thing to understand. Because if a person is unsure if they're loved, often it can be because they're not understanding they're loved, because their partner's not using their strategy. Now, the trouble is, the reason these things trip us up is that when we first get together in a relationship, we tend to use all of them as a kind of matter of course. It's like you tell the person, oh, I'm in love with you. You buy them flowers, you take them out to dinner, you touch them, and all that kind of thing. So all the 3 tends to get a look in the beginning. And then we move into kind of past the honeymoon phase of the relationship and into the deeper love phase of the relationship. And then what happens is we tend to revert to our way of communicating love. So if you're a words person, you'll tell your partner, I love you, a lot. Now, if they're a words person, that's fine. But if they want to be touched in a special way and you don't anymore, as much as you did in the beginning, they'll start to think that you don't love them. There's the classic story of the husband who brings his wife flowers every week to demonstrate that kind of love when she actually needs him to say the words. And then when eventually the relationship kind of breaks down, what happens? She says, but you never say you love me. And he says, but I bring you flowers every week. And they're just not talking the same language. So there's a really good thing in this, is that once you understand this is how we communicate love with each other, it's really easy to rectify it. If you want to know if you want your partner to know that you love him or her, then all you have to do is work out what their strategy is and fulfill it. And it takes a few moments to do that, because just look at what they do for you. That's going to be their strategy. Whatever way they do things for you, whether they buy you things or do things for you, whether they tell you in a particular way or they touch you in a particular way, that's going to be their strategy. So all you have to do actually is watch them for a little bit and then make sure you listen and watch so that you can fulfill each other's love strategy. It's so simple. I have a very old friend of mine who told me a story once about a very short marriage that he had. And he was married for about 9 months. And when he got married, his wife said to him, all you have to do is bring me flowers every Friday and I'll know you love me. She actually told him what the strategy was. And he, being who he is stubborn and thought to himself, well, I'm never going to do that then. I'm not going to be told what to do. And so 9 months later, she said, I want a divorce. And he said, why? And she said, you don't love me. I told you how to show it. You don't love me. And literally that was the end of the marriage for her. It's like, if you can't make that little effort, then it's over, kind of thing. And so, it's like, such a simple thing to understand each other's love strategies, and such a brilliant way to bring that feeling of caring, back into the actual relationship. It's not a huge effort to do it, but it makes a huge difference. And I always think that taking the time to learn each other's love strategies and, using it, even though it might not be yours, that's a demonstration of love in itself. I love you enough to show you in a way that I'll know you'll get it. So that's for me, a huge key for great relationships and communicating in the right way within a relationship. But then we also have another next kind of what I say the big key is around communication itself. It's there's many different ways we communicate within relationships. We're going to look at a few different things this evening. But one which I think is fascinating, actually, and this is something that's not just for personal relationships. This can be in work relationships, and it can be, in many different ways. So if you have a situation where in your relationship you think what I say doesn't land, or in a work relationship, again what you're saying isn't landing with the person you're speaking to, this could be actually the key for you. Because there's two types of communication. One is literal and one is inferential. Now, they're very simple to understand, and once you know them, you can hear them in how people speak. But so, for example, if somebody said, "I'm cold," and a literal listener, when they hear that, will literally just hear that someone is cold and find it either interesting or not. That will be it. However, if an inferential listener heard somebody say, "I'm cold," they would then make it mean something. And they might be compelled to get up and do something about it. So they'll hear "I'm cold," and then in their minds, they'll make that mean something. They'll infer something by it and then take action on it. So we either speak literally or inferentially. A literal speaker will just ask straight out for something that they want, whereas an inferential speaker will make suggestions or vague comments and hope the other person will guess what they mean. So, for example, a literal speaker might say, "Please get some milk while you're out." And if she's talking to somebody who's an inferential listener, they might hear, "You didn't get the milk last time you went shopping, you're useless. For heaven's sakes, remember it this time." Now, that's not what the person speaking actually said, but it's what the partner heard. And this is the thing, this is where you get lots of misunderstandings. And this is where particularly if you're dealing with somebody who's inferential, they'll say, "But you said so-and-so." And you'll go, "No, I didn't." But that's what they heard. For another example, somebody who is inferential, who speaks and listens inferentially, might say, "There's a lovely new restaurant open up down the road," kind of meaning, "Could you take me to dinner? I'd like to go there." And their partner, who might be literal, might be going, "Yeah, I saw that too." And then, the person standing there going, "Oh." And then they say, "Jane went there last week and said it was really good." Again, inferring, "Can you take me to dinner?" And the literal partner will go, "Yeah, Bob told me that too." And again, some smoke's beginning to come out of the inferential speaker's thing. Until the person who's the inferential speaker says, "Take me there for dinner," then her partner might go, "Yeah, sure. Okay, that's a great idea." So those kind of conversations may ring true with you in your relationships or in past relationships, but look what a minefield that communication is. And it's simply because one person listens and speaks in one way, a literal way, and the other person listens and speaks in an inferential way. And that's that whole thing of the inferential speaker is always wanting the other person to guess. Now, if they're also talking to somebody who's inferential, they probably will guess. They might not guess right, mind you. So it's about an understanding that sometimes we need to kind of make ourselves clearer if we realise that we're very inferential in the way that we speak. So actually taking responsibility for our communication. And when we're wanting to make a request within a relationship, even if it's not our normal way of communicating, making sure we do communicate in that way. Because neither is right or wrong. It's not like, literal speakers are better than inferential speakers. That's not the situation at all. but it can cause huge misunderstandings, particularly if you've got one kind of the partnership inferentially speaking all over the place, wanting the other person to guess, the other person's guessing it wrong. You can see it's just a kind of a spiral that goes downhill. So understanding which way you are and how you speak and how you communicate and looking out for those pitfalls can be really, really helpful. And hopefully will lessen the amount of misunderstandings that come up within a relationship. So that's another key. How do you communicate in that way? Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk about is how our values and how we interpret them. That's really key things. We all have values that are important to us in our lives. And you may have looked at your values before and understood what they are for you. Or maybe the concept has just been a kind of a vague concept for you. But either way, I just want to go into them a little bit because values are incredibly important, both for us in our own personal life, but also within our relationships. Now, our values stick with us throughout our lives. We have a value system that tends to form quite early on in life. It's something that's inherent within us, and we know when our values aren't being honoured, either by ourselves or by the people around us, because we feel awful. One of the exercises that I get people to do when I'm working with them is that I get them to understand what their values are. And the first part of the exercise is I say to people, think back to a time when you were really, really frustrated. You know, when something was not going right, and in your head you were kind of screaming, this is just so wrong. Okay, it's those kind of times in our lives where our values are really obviously not being honoured. And so if you look at a few of those kind of times and then you write down what's happening, and it might be that you're not being listened to, so maybe communication or respect is a really important value. Or it could be that something happened amongst your group of friends and somehow you weren't invited to something and that didn't feel right. So maybe friendship is a really huge value to you. So looking at those times of frustration in your life when things aren't going right and understanding that that's when a time when values are being transgressed is one way to find your own values. Now, another way is to look at the opposite, is looking at a time in your life when everything is peachy. Absolutely nothing has to change. And it's not a cocktails on the beach, in the Caribbean moment. It's an everyday moment that's just brilliant. And then asking yourself, what's happening here? And seeing what values are being lived in that moment. So we have a value system, and normally when I'm working with somebody, we look at probably about 5 or 6 main values, and there might be a few kind of subheadings, because how we live our values also changes through our lives. The value will stay the same, but how we live them might change. So, for example, in our 20s, we could have a value of friendship, and that could be fun, adventure, and spontaneity. And then maybe in our 50s, it might still be fun, but it might have loyalty or companionship or trust in there. So how we live our values can be different, but the main headline value of friendship will stay with us throughout our lives. The thing about values is that it's fine when we're just looking at our own personal values and making sure the decisions we're making, are honouring our own value system. The times when it can get tricky is when we start looking at joint values within a relationship. And we're often attracted to people who have a similar value system. That's why one of the reasons we like them. And it's important to understand that not only do we have these values, but we each have a meaning of what that value means to us. And this is where, even though a relationship may be based on a shared value, actually the meaning that we give them might be different. And that's where sometimes things can be tricky and we can get tripped up by our joint values. So as I said, when you first meet somebody, you learn as much as you can about them. You tell stories about yourself, and that illustrates who you are and what's important to you. You'll have new experiences together, and how you react and respond will teach both of you about each other, and you will just kind of learn each other's value systems and what you like and dislike. And, you know, sometimes we watch each other and we look at our partner's reaction to something, for example, and then we'll make a supposition about what's important to them. And then those can be tricky because sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. And the odd thing is that we've made these suppositions, we've looked at somebody, we get to know someone, and we base a relationship on them. And then sometimes it can be much later in a relationship, you know, 6, 7 years down the road, and they might come and trip us up, and we're not quite sure why. So, for example, just to give you an example, let's take a couple who have one of their joint values is that their relationship is based on is trust. And this is actually an example from a counselling course that I did many, many years ago, which really just illustrates, you know, the minefield again that values can be. Now, you know, most people would say, yeah, of course you base a relationship on trust. And trust is a very important value for most people. Funnily enough, not every relationship might have it as a joint value, but this one is for the example does. But the question is that never got asked and never does get asked really is, what does trust mean for each of the individual people within the relationship? Now, in this example, for the man, it meant that his wife would never look at another man and definitely not flirt with anybody. You know, that was just a no-go. And he felt that trust means you'll only have eyes for me and I trust you not to look anywhere else. Now, for her, who also had the value of trust within the relationship, it meant you can trust me never to betray you. I might flirt with other men, but I only really have eyes for you. It doesn't mean anything. Now, you can see where that's going to trip this couple up. He's going to get incredibly upset when she goes out and she gets flirty with other men, and she can't understand the jealousy because to her it's just nothing. And she feels totally trustworthy because she knows that she'd never act on it. So even though both of them have trust as the meaning, I only have eyes for you, their expectation and how they live the value of trust is totally different. And this kind of thing can lead to all sorts of trouble. So this might be ringing bells with you. And if it is, you know, it's worth looking at and seeing, well, where maybe have we got what we think is a joint value, but actually we're living and making that value mean something different. You know, have a look. Are there areas in your relationships, either personal ones, and this can also be the same within work relationships as well, and things that seem to jar, but you've never really kind of worked out why? And if there are, it could be because you think you're talking about the same thing, but in fact you've got a completely different meaning. So that might be a conversation and an understanding between you, because once these kind of things are brought into awareness, once you understand why you've got that miscommunication, then you can really work out, you know, how to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. So defining your joint values, actually looking at them together, is an incredible thing that you can do within your relationship, because you take your relationship to a much deeper level. You know, not only about what are the values that are important to you within the relationship, but what do they actually mean for you as a couple? And sometimes that means a conversation where you're coming together, and it's not that you're making a compromise, but you're making literally a joint statement that both of you are happy and both of you can live with. And that way you kind of eliminate any problems that come up around values. So that's another real key for the great relationship. So the next area that I think is really interesting, and I just want to take aside things, is particularly for those singletons who are listening, is how do we attract a great relationship? And this is also very much about kind of being complete in yourself before you have a relationship, because it's really important that your relationship is about two people sharing who they are, not I want you to fill a hole in my life. Now, you know, I wanted to put this into this kind of talk because even for people who are those of you who are in relationships, if that's how the expectation that you have of the relationship, I expect you to complete me, I expect you to fill that hole next to me so I feel complete, then that's a huge, huge ask of any other human being on the planet, let alone the person who loves you. And what you're saying is that I'm actually putting all my happiness in your hands. And so whether that's a situation that you're in a relationship, or you're actually in a place where you want to attract a relationship, it's about focusing on loving your life as completely as you can as an individual. Because when you do that, then you become the biggest attractor of all time. When I have people come to me and one of the things they want to work on in relation is actually attracting a relationship into their lives, I go, okay, cool, great. And we do a little bit of work around kind of what do people want in a relationship. And then we spend the rest of the time of getting so happy that with the life that they've got single, that actually people want to come and share it with them. Because when you've got someone who's loving life, that is really, really attractive to anybody. And neediness is the biggest turn off of all. Wanting somebody to come and complete me, wanting somebody to fill that hole, wanting somebody to make me happy, yeah, they're going to run a mile. So if you're in a situation where you'd like to bring somebody into your life, then please focus on getting incredibly happy with where you are. And if you need to make some changes, then that's possible too. And if you're in the situation where, you know, there's a kind of a pressure within your relationship and you know, either they're expecting you to complete them or you're expecting them, it's about shifting the focus of the relationship. So that's not the main thing you're expecting of somebody, but it's about sharing your life with them, being responsible for your own happiness within it. But one of the things that's also really important, whether you want to bring a relationship into your life or you want to make the relationship that you have even better, is it's important to know how you want to feel in your relationship. Because all the things we do in our lives, everything actually that we do in our lives, is about how we feel. It's about creating a specific feeling in our lives for ourselves. And so it's really important to understand, if you want to bring a relationship in, is to understand how do you want to feel within the relationship. Because understanding how you want to feel in the relationship is going to give you a key pointer when you meet someone. Because if that someone makes you feel a certain way, then you'll pretty much know that you're going to be on the right track. It's also those, if you're in a relationship and you know how you want to feel, and you've actually gone, okay, my relationship maybe just needs something and I'm not sure what. One of the things is, rather than focusing on you have to change or you have to do something, it's more about focusing on, well, okay, so how do I want to feel within my relationship, and what is missing and what do I need to address? And it might be something within you, or it might be something within the relationship itself. So understanding that feelings is the end result of what we're going for in life. It's always a really useful thing to understand how you feel. When I'm working with people who want to bring a relationship into their life, we often look at what are the key things that you want, what are the qualities you want in the person you want to be with, what are some of the deal breakers, what are the joint interests that you want to do, how much time do you want to spend together, all these different things. And people get very kind of focused on this. And then I always say, well, how does that make you feel? And I think that is a real key thing. How does it make you feel? Because actually, all those bits and pieces, yeah, they might have all that, but somebody might come along who also makes you feel the way you want to feel and doesn't have all those things. But that's fine, because the end result is still ticked. So how do you want to feel, I think, is a really key thing. Whether you're wanting to be in a relationship or whether you're in one and it doesn't feel right. Firstly, identify how it is you want it to feel, and then see what's missing, what needs to change within me, within the relationship, or in any other way to bring that feeling back in. So I want to talk about the next one, which is about, again, talking about communication, but this is a slightly different thing. We've already covered the inferential and the literal, but I want to talk about how you handle those tricky conversations when you can't see the wood for the trees. Now, these are the conversations that we shy away from because we're really worried that if we bring them up, our partner's going to get the wrong idea, get angry, get defensive, not hear us, take it so personally and so we tend to just kind of shy away from those kind of conversations. I know in all my past relationships, other than the current relationship I'm in now, and I have learned so much in my current relationship on how to have really honest and wonderful communication. But I know all the past relationships I had, these were the conversations that never happened. And these were the conversations that, because they never happened, it's why the relationship ended. And one of the things with those kind of tricky conversations is that the reason we don't start the conversation, the reason we don't bring up things, is often because we feel that what we say isn't going to be heard, because they're going to go straight into reaction. They're not going to hear us. They're going to get into defensive. They're going to end up in one of those horrible arguments that doesn't help anyway. So the key one of this, and again, this is an agreement that you have between you, but the key thing of this is to have a phrase that is a heads up that kind of says, I need to say something, I need to talk to you about something, but I'm really asking you to not go into reaction, not take this personally, and just hear what I have to say first. Now, we have a saying which is called the peas are green this summer. Doesn't mean anything in particular, just is the heads up phrase. So if I realize that there's something that we need to talk about that's bugging me, that I just have to be heard on and find resolution within, taking responsibility for what's going, but I need the conversation, I'll just say, I've got a peas are green thing that we need to talk about. Is now okay? And that's a key thing, is now okay? And the agreement is my partner can say, no, not now, but has to say, but I'll speak to you tomorrow about it, or we'll talk about it at the weekend, or you set a time. So it's not that it's brushed off, it's just that the timing for them is not okay. And that's fine for them to say that. And then when you do kind of start the conversation, it's very much about, okay, I just need to say these things. I need you to hear all of them. And then once I've spoken, you know, you don't interrupt me or say anything, you can then say whatever you need to say. And again, I listen. And so it's very much about being a respectful listening space. So those tricky conversations can happen. And it's really quite amazing when you do have those kind of conversations, just how much your relationship can benefit. Clear, honest communication is a huge thing. And some people find it incredibly difficult, and some people find it not so difficult. But I know that every single time I've been through those, and we've had quite a few of them in the 15 years that we've been together, every time we've addressed these tricky situations, things that could have very easily ended up in, you know, making us grow further and further apart, every time we've addressed them, we've always come back in a deeper relationship. It has deepened our relationship, which is quite lovely, because they're not easy conversations. They're not fun. But if you can commit to doing them and having them, when you come out the other side, you know, it makes a huge difference. And the other thing that we have around these moments when, you know, relationships are in the balance and you're not sure which way it's going to go, is that we had an agreement that we made very, very early on in the beginning of our relationship, after having some advice from a close friend. And he said to us, he said, in all his relationships, he's had the agreement that you can only leave in a sober moment. And what he meant by that was that you might have a really bad time going on in the relationship, but you can't leave when you hate each other. You can't leave when you're angry with each other. You can't just walk out the door and that's the end of that. You have to have the conversation, the tricky conversation. You have to get through to the end of it. And if at the end of it you decide that actually, no, this isn't going to work, you're in the sober moment, you've had the conversation, then the relationship can end. And what's key about that is that you've dealt with whatever it is, you know. And that's always been an incredible thing for us, because, and if you can use this, what happens is that for the majority of the time, you know, if you've got a good relationship and it's something that you can address, then you get to a deeper connection. And if you don't, then when you leave the relationship, you don't leave with anger. And that's a huge thing, to actually leave a relationship from a good space. We've dealt with it, we've looked at it, we've come to resolution with it, but actually we've decided that no, this isn't the relationship for us. And so, you know, you can move on. Because one of the things that I promise you is, if these situations that you're having tricky conversations about, you're having those difficult conversations, if they're patterns that have repeated themselves within relationships throughout your life, if you don't address it, if you don't move through it, if you don't have the conversation and understand your part in it and what you've done as much as what they've done, I promise you it'll come round again in the next relationship. That pattern will keep repeating, and what it's doing is it's coming round and going, want to look at it now? Want to look at it now? And each time it happens, you have that opportunity. So if you can use something like the peas are green this summer and initiate a conversation that's going to be a useful, even if it might be a difficult conversation, there's always something for you to learn for yourself. And you come out of it and you can choose about who you wish to be in that relationship and in your life. And so relationships are one of our greatest teachers. And each challenge that's in it for us is there for us to learn. And when I lived in the ashram, one of the swamis said, we, you know, all we have to do is put people together and they rub up against each other and all those rough parts get kind of like ground down and the smooth diamond comes out. Relationships do that for us. So taking the time to have those conversations is an incredible thing to do. And I heartily, you know, encourage you to have some kind of ridiculous phrase like peas are green. It helps hugely. And last, but certainly not least, I want to talk about the thing that I think is absolutely lovely in relationships, and that is gratitude. Gratitude is one of the biggest practices I think we have and can have in our lives. I think it's huge. And I have a lovely page on Facebook where you can post a photograph of something that you're grateful for every day. And it can be a little thing, even on days that when you're having the worst day ever. You know, it might be, I'm grateful for this cup of tea. It doesn't matter, but it's about understanding that even whatever's happening that's going on in the world, you can be grateful for something. And then often when you start with one thing, you can look around and go, oh yeah, I'm grateful for that too. And I'm grateful for that too. And it just puts you into a whole different place of gratitude. But one of the things I love in relationships is gratitude for the small stuff. And this is something that often, again, happens in the beginning of a relationship. And then when we move in and we live together for a while, we start to take each other just for granted. And the problem is that we stop seeing what the other person is doing for us. And we do things for each other in relationships all day, every day. Really simple things like making me a cup of tea, or doing the washing up, or taking the rubbish out, or hanging up the washing, or doing the hoovering, or going shopping, or filling the car up with petrol. All these everyday things that, because you're in relationship, isn't just for you, it's actually for your partner too. And one of the things that we have in our relationship is that we say thank you every single time. So if I cook, Bitch will say thanks for cooking. And then if she washes up, I'll say thanks for doing the washing up. We do it every day, but we always say thank you to each other. And what this actually is saying within the relationship is, I still see you. I still appreciate you. Even after 15 years of you doing the washing up, I still appreciate it. And there's something incredibly powerful of having that acknowledgement. I see you, you are seen, you are appreciated. And it's really interesting because it's something that I talk about when I'm working with people in, you know, about their relationships. And I've seen relationships completely turn around just from this one simple thing. And it's an agreement between the two people within the relationship. And it's like, I want to try this. And there's something very lovely about it. And I've also seen relationships flounder, and particularly one I should never forget, a few years ago now, a woman I was working with, wanted to try this because she felt very unseen within her relationship. And, her husband refused to do it. And for her, it was the last straw. And so it was very interesting for her to realize that, she needed to be in a relationship where she was actually seen and appreciated on a daily basis. So gratitude for the small stuff is a real, real key thing within relationships. And it's lovely. I think it's one of the really very simple. See, all these things are quite simple. They might not be easy to do, but they are quite simple. And all we have to do really is make that effort to reap the rewards. And the amount of effort that we have to make is tiny compared to the rewards. Because if we were communicating, if you think of all the things that we've covered today, all these things within this is like, fulfilling each other's love strategies. It's so simple. Once you understand that your partner needs to have things done for him, or to bring her flowers, or to tell him that you love him in a certain way, whatever it is, if you can do that, you are on a daily basis, and it is about doing it on a daily basis. And it's not flowers every day. It might be just little things like making a cup of tea for somebody if they like having things done for them. But if you're doing things consciously on a daily basis, you are every day telling that lovely person that you're with that you love them. And that's what we want. We all want to be loved. So, make that effort to reap the huge reward of knowing that you're loved, but you're communicating love to your partner. Understanding how you speak. Are you one of those inferential speakers that expect the other person to guess what you mean? If you are, sometimes you're going to be on a hiding to nothing, particularly if you live with a literal person. It's almost unfair to expect people to guess what you mean. So when you're wanting something very, very specific, even if you're inferential, make the effort to actually speak literally. If you're both inferential, then you really do have to make effort. But at least you can now understand why sometimes your communication doesn't land. Looking and knowing at your joint values and realizing that although you think you might be speaking about the same value, you might be giving that value a different meaning. And if you are, talking about that, why this one doesn't work, what does it actually mean for you, what does it mean for me, and finding a middle ground between the two. That's really, really important. Making the effort to love your life, even if you're not in a relationship, because there's nothing more attractive than somebody who loves their life. And if you're in a relationship, not putting the onus for your happiness on your partner, but just making sure that you're taking responsibility for your life and loving what you do in your life and sharing that with your partner. And equally, they share their happiness with you, because a happiness shared is, exponentially huge. But if you're waiting for the other person to make you happy, or if you're single and waiting for somebody to come along and make you happy, you've got a heck of a long wait. So actually making sure that you love your life and then can share that with whoever you're with. Make the effort to know how you want to feel within a relationship, so that when it's not going right, you get the heads up and you realize what areas in your relationship aren't working. And also, if you're a single and you know how you want to feel, if you meet somebody and they make you feel that, even if you don't know them very well, you know that you're probably on a good, it's a good match maybe coming up. And then you obviously need to take the time to get to know each other. Committing, and this is, again, an agreement between you, but committing to having those tricky conversations. Those are the ones that deepen and enrich a relationship beyond all understanding. And like I said, if you don't do them in this one, then you might have to do them in the next one. So you might as well do them in this one and see how it works out. And they can be actually very rewarding. And practicing the gratitude, especially for the small stuff, it's so simple. Again, it's a little effort and a huge reward. What you're doing is saying to the person on a subconscious level, I see you and I appreciate you. And as human beings, we all want to be seen and appreciated. So those are the 7 keys to great relationship. And I don't know if any of you out there have any questions at all. I'm just going to have a look at the chat panel that's coming up here a second. And if you have, you can just type in your questions now, and I will answer those that kind of come in online right now. I have a couple that came in from people who registered, and so let me just bring those up on another screen, because a couple of them were really interesting. And so I don't have obviously a slide for them, but I do just want to address them because I think they were very, very interesting questions. And the first one that came up was, what can I do when I see so much potential in my partner that they're not fulfilling? I feel frustrated by that. And this is something that comes up in relationships kind of every now and again, and it's a real tricky one, because what's happened is that we've fallen in love with somebody's potential rather than who they are. Now, you as the person who has this situation, you might be able to support your partner to fulfill their potential if they want your support. And so the first thing you can do is talk to them and just, say, I kind of feel this, and I have a feeling that it's something that you really like to do, and I'd love to support you in it, and is there anything I can do? And if they say yes, absolutely, you can support them. And if they say, no, I'm not really interested, well, then even if you think that might be brilliant for them, it's their life and they have to make the decision. But, and here's the real important thing in this, is that you've actually got to really look at the relationship if you've fallen in love with the potential of somebody, and ask yourself, if this person never fulfills that potential, do I still love them? And if you don't, then it's a really big decision. It's like, okay, how do I feel about living with somebody who's not going to feel that potential? And it doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make you wrong, but it's very tricky for you, if you're the person who's looking at your partner and going, oh, if only they do this, and if only they do that, that you then, can you live with that and not feel frustrated and blame them for that frustration? And I think that's a real key thing, that actually you need to love the person who's in front of you, not what they could turn into. So that's a really important distinction. Another question that came in is, how can I deal with a money disparity? In other words, the person who wrote earned far more than their partner and was very happy with that. That was not a problem. And it wasn't necessarily a problem for their partner, but the main thing was their partner wanted to pay their way. So, for example, when they went on holiday, it was the woman who actually earned a lot of money. She wanted to fly business first class, or business class, and her partner couldn't afford it. And so it was becoming limiting. And she was like, I'm really happy to pay for everything, but that doesn't feel right with him. So what do I do in this situation? And the solution to this was an agreement on that they would have an account. They worked out how he was going to pay just the everyday bills. That was one thing, but it was more about the fun stuff that they wanted to do. And so they worked out that what they'd do was have an account where they both put a certain percentage of their income. So obviously she put more because her income was higher, but he put a percentage in too. And that was the play account. And they had, like a debit card on the account. So they both had a card. And so it was one also really useful because, in the traditional role play of the society that we live in, it was really nice that he could be seen to pay. And so there wasn't that kind of thing like, oh, she pays for everything kind of thing going on. And they both felt they contributed, and they both contributed a specific percentage of their income. So that's actually, in answer to that question, that's how you can deal with it. You can actually have a separate account that is the fun stuff, and you just agree a percentage on what goes in. And then you both feel that you've made that contribution to it, and you can take it further from there. So that is another one. And then there was one other question that I wanted to address, because somebody had written to me because they know that I think I've talked about it in blogs that I've done before, but however, a long distance relationship. In other words, my partner lives in Zurich half the time and I live in Spain, and like, how do you manage that? And it's really interesting, actually, because in fact, I actually really love it. Not because I don't want to be with her all the time, but because actually it gives me time to have time to do the stuff that's just for me. I don't have to worry about, what she wants to do. I can just be nicely selfish in that time, which is always fun. But the key thing is about keeping in communication. And one of the things that we always make sure we do is Skype is brilliant because you can actually have a video, and there's something about seeing each other. And we always Skype quite a few times throughout the day just for little things. But we'll also make Skype dates. So because we tend to be apart on average around 2 weeks at a time. And we'll make Skype dates. So when we're busy at work during the week, we just speak, when we can throughout the day and keep in contact and see each other and everything. And then I'll just say, okay, let's have a kind of Skype date on Friday night if we're both home. And what we do is we open up Skype and have it open for hours, literally, and have it on speaker. And so I can walk into the kitchen and I can cook something and carry on talking, and it's like she's in the other room. And so we do that. And we'll have Saturday breakfast together or Sunday breakfast together or something like that. And so we actually make an agreement, make a time, we book a time. And that's the key thing, because life does get busy, and we realise that if we don't book that time, then it'll be, I'm not around on Saturday for breakfast. But if we know that we're going to have a couple of hours together for breakfast on Saturday, neither of us will make an appointment to go and do something else. So around, again, and it's been a key thing, communication is a key part of a long distance relationship. Seeing each other on video really helped. When Skype did video for the first time, it just turned our relationship around. But also making time for each other, even when you're in different countries, to have a long, 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 hours at home, chatting, doing things. You don't have to sit and look at each other all the time, because once you're on the speakerphone, you can walk around and just chat and everything else. So that's one of the tricks for managing a long distance relationship. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this webinar. I hope you have enjoyed it. I have thoroughly enjoyed being with you. It's been great fun. And I hope that all the things that we've talked about have resonated for you, and you've understood, and some of the things that you can take away and start using straight away. And I just wanted to say that, happy early Valentine's, absolutely. I think that's a really key thing. Have a lovely Valentine's Day. Make sure you're communicating how you love your partner in the right way. And relationships are just one of the areas that I cover when I work with people about changing their lives. And so if, having heard this, you feel that maybe you'd like to explore working with me and making some changes either in the relationship or just bringing other things into your life, then I'd love to have a chat with you, and we could set up a time to have a discovery session. And there's the email that's on there now, and you can write to me. And you can also go to my website at jessicamcgregorjohnson.com. And there's lots of different programs that I have. You can review those. But there's also a 6-month free email course called Life Lessons. And the first 6 months are completely free. You get 2 lessons every month, and they just drop into your inbox every 2 weeks. And they're really practical things. They're like managing stress, bringing more joy, looking at values, looking how to make better decisions, all those kind of things that trip us up in life. And I've written it just as a support, an everyday support. And so if you feel that that would be useful for you, then please do go to the website and sign up. And if I can help you in any other way, you're more than welcome to request a discovery session, and we can set up a time. So thank you so much for being with me. It's been a lovely evening. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you have too. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about this evening, please do just drop me a line. I'm really happy to answer those. And if you've been sitting here listening to this and thinking, oh, my friend Jane could do with this, or my friend Bob could do with this, please, you're going to get a link to the replay of this webinar. Please do just pass that on. I would be really grateful, because I think relationships are so key in our lives, and I really would like as many people as possible to have this information so they can have better relationships. So if you can think of anybody who would like to listen to this and who would benefit from listening to this, then I'd be really grateful if you just send the link to your friends. That would be wonderful. And as I say, if I can help you in any way, you know where I am. Please do get in touch. And I look forward to speaking with you again in a couple of months. We'll be doing another webinar in, where are we? We're January, so February, March. It's every 2 months. And I will be dropping you a line and letting you know what that is about in March. Have a wonderful February. Have the wonderful rest of January. And we'll talk again in March, if not before. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.